Welcome everybody. So today I thought I would do a quick movie review before I go into work, and that is going to be for the 1990 action movie The Matrix. So The Matrix stars Keanu Reeves as well as Lawrence Fishburne and Carrie-Anne Moss. This is an awesome movie, so if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend you checking this out. This is also a hero's journey type of film, so if you're looking for something similar to that where it's the hero kind of denying his true calling and then eventually becoming the hero in the end, this is the movie for you. This movie is directed by Larry and Andy Wachowski. The Wachowski brothers, and I'm a huge fan of their films. I'm a huge fan of The Matrix Reloaded. I kind of like Matrix Revolutions. I liked a whole lot, even though a lot of people didn't like it too much. But this movie starts off, you see Keanu Reeves is kind of a computer programmer. He's a hacker type, a cyber warfare type of person. He later discovers Morpheus, who is looking for him, as well as Carrie-Anne Moss. Morpheus telling him to come meet him. They eventually meet at some sort of nightclub sort of scene, and that's where Carrie-Anne Moss starts to form sort of a relationship with Neo. Later on in the movie, you'll find out that it was kind of the prophetic fate that Carrie-Anne Moss would kind of fall in love with somebody that they consider to be the one. The one is basically this military leader who was really good in battle and stuff, and he eventually died, but they thought, maybe at some point he would become reincarnated into somebody else. So this movie deals a little bit with not only quantum physics and quantum mechanics, but also philosophy as well as reincarnation a little bit. Neo kind of rejects this originally. He wakes up at his computer once again. He's late for work. Once he's at work, in which his boss is unhappy with his work ethic, he pretty much states that when he first started working here, he was top of his class, that he was doing really well in this, and he kind of just dropped off, and that somehow he thinks the rules don't apply to Neo, which Neo, I don't really know if he believes it or not, but Neo has been kind of trying to find something within himself to believe in and to be something more than just, this average, office worker. And that's where Morpheus kind of brings him in and asks him to either take the red or the blue pill. The blue pill pretty much will lead him back to his normal everyday life. The red pill will kind of lead him along the path to the Matrix and, finding himself and being the one and being this badass kind of superhero in a way. What I think is really interesting about the Matrix is every time they enter sort of the real world, it is color corrected blue. Every time they enter the Matrix world, you can kind of tell because there's a green kind of color corrected tint to it. I don't know if this is just signifying the fact that, the real world is the world that, they kind of want to be in, even though it's a post-apocalyptic scenario, which Morpheus later on kind of attempts to kind of tell Neo that, there's this big giant war between the humans and the machines, and that the one was the one that kind of brought everybody together to fight these machines and try to wake everybody up who is still trapped inside of this Matrix world or simulated reality, where they think it's 1991, but it's actually further in the future inside this Matrix world, kind of like our modern day scenario where you got, skyscrapers and buildings and stuff, where outside of that world, everything's been completely obliterated and destroyed and the sky's kind of scorched, which is kind of horrifying in a way to kind of look at. You've got Trinity, who's also on this quest to find the one. She is the highest ranking members on board the Nebuchadnezzar, which she kind of states towards the end of the film when Neo kind of tells her that he doesn't want her to come with to rescue Morpheus, who's been kidnapped by Agent Smith, played by Hugo Weaving. Agent Smith being these sort of machines that can kind of shapeshift from other humans within the Matrix realm, or people who are claiming to be humans. Later on, you kind of find out through Morpheus during that whole scenario where he's kind of explaining what happened between the war between the humans and machine, that the machines use humans as sort of like a battery, consuming their life force and everything so that they can use it to fuel. And so once Neo kind of sees this, he becomes horrified, kind of wakes up again, and he's inside of this hospital inside the Nebuchadnezzar. They are kind of working on him, trying to fix him, adding in the plugs and everything to his body, which you'll eventually learn is the way that they jack into the Matrix, and gives him kind of superhuman abilities. Neo eventually fights Morpheus, which is a cool ass action scene. He fights in sort of like a dojo, and there's even a training simulation where they kind of leap across a skyscraper, and obviously Neo fails, and that's where you meet Cypher, and he's like, everybody fails the first time or falls the first time, which I think is a funny line. Cypher, you later learn, has another subplot where he's trying to get from the real world back into the Matrix, and he wants to be this, celebrity, and he kind of does a backhanded deal with the agents to try and get himself back into the Matrix, where he would kind of capture Neo and Morpheus, and then hopefully that would end the war between the machines, so Agent Smith thinks. We later learn that Neo starts to believe in himself a little bit more after he's kind of done the training simulations and fighting Morpheus and kind of getting back into the swing of things, fighting the agents once more, and he kind of progresses with his kung fu mastery and his jujitsu and his other sort of martial arts skill that he learns along the way. And then, that's where the climax happens, where you finally find out that Neo finds himself to be the one, where he and Trinity kind of go through this terminal. It kind of looks like a TSA terminal inside of this giant skyscraper where the agents are hiding Morpheus and kind of held captive. They're trying to interrogate him to find the codes to Zion, which Zion is this underground city where the humans have a last-ditch resort where they're kind of hiding out so that they can eventually kind of of rise to the occasion once the machines have been destroyed, hopefully, by the One. Morpheus isn't giving him the codes. He doesn't want to give him the codes because that would mean the destruction of everything they've been fighting for and everybody that they've been trying to save. So Neo and Trinity kind of both jack into the Matrix. Neo kind of refusing at first to let Trinity go with him because he thinks it's dangerous and that she probably won't come out alive. She explaining to him that she's the highest ranking officer on board the ship, and if he doesn't like it, he can go to hell, which I think is a pretty cool line. This leads to that awesome action sequence where you see sort of Neo and Trinity fighting the guards inside of the terminal, basically. There's also a cool action sequence where Neo fights Agent Smith in sort of a subway tunnel where he's trying to escape so they can go back into the real world. And they eventually do rescue Morpheus. Neo pretty much steals a helicopter and has the helicopter pretty much turn, and then he's on the machine gun and he's just kind of manning the thing and just exploding round after round into the windows, which I think is pretty cool. This shows the bullet time effect, which I think is really revolutionary, where you have kind of a stream of cameras lined around the actors, and then it just kind of frame by frame kind of takes a picture, and that leads into sort of a video where you can kind of slow down the footage and everything. And I think this was really revolutionary at the time, and movies such as Wanted and other films have kind of copied this technique as well. And some of the wire effects kind of have been copied, where you see people like leaping in the air and stuff and doing crazy action sequences and stuff. And this stuff is awesome. Like, I think if anybody really wants to be a filmmaker, this is one of those movies that you definitely have to see, especially before you die. I think Matrix and Matrix Reloaded are really good, even though people don't really like Reloaded that much. For this time, Matrix was a really mind-blowing experience for people. You know, you have awesome action sequences, you have, you know, insane kung fu martial arts stuff going on. You've got a really well-told story with actors that you kind of enjoy. Keanu Reeves becoming this sort of badass, going from, you know, this office worker to sort of a messiah prophet, sort of like Jesus in a way. And this movie deals with a lot of things that I think even people nowadays can kind of relate to. And the dialogue, the one-liners, and some of the stuff like, you know, Morpheus fighting Neo, or, you know, the scenes where there's a lot of sort of philosophical talk going on, I think are really great. So I think if anybody really wants to check out this movie, they definitely should. I would highly recommend it to any filmmaker or a budding filmmaker who kind of wants to get, you know, inspired by what film can do. So I'm going to give The Matrix about an A. I think the soundtrack is great. I think the visual effects are great. They don't really rely too much on CGI, even though there's a lot of CGI in this movie. The CGI was just kind of perfecting itself, which is how we kind of got The Matrix Revolutions, which was hugely heavily influenced with CGI, whereas this movie uses practical effects mixed with CGI, which I kind of enjoy. This movie has a really great soundtrack. There's a lot of hardcore, heavy metal, rock and roll, and stuff like that in this movie. And some of the artists that I kind of listened to were pretty much influenced from this movie. You know, like the 90s rock and roll era is sort of my thing, something that I really enjoy listening to and coming back to from time to time. So I really did have a good time watching this movie as a kid, and I recently just watched this, and this movie still holds up to this day. There's very few movies that can hold up, even with the visual effects that they have at the time, and The Matrix still kind of is one of those movies that you can kind of go back to and kind of watch, and it never gets old. It never kind of loses that coolness factor, which a lot of movies nowadays, even The Last Jedi, kind of starts to lose that coolness factor toward every year that passes. But The Matrix and the Matrix franchise as a whole pretty much still holds up. The philosophical meanings of what it takes to be the One, or, you know, the hero's journey that Neo and the rest of the cast kind of go on, is something that I think is still relevant even to this day. I don't see a time in my lifetime, or even the lifetime after mine, where The Matrix is not a movie series that people aren't just going to go watch and they're going to go, yeah, that's still pretty cool. But that's why I'm going to give The Matrix an A. Guys, learn a thing or two about the movie industry. And if you guys like this, please rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.